वे तपस्या does reap benefits.
सर इसको आईएएस आपने बनाया, फोरम ने बनाया एक्चुअली। तो फोरम ने इसका पोटेंशियल जो देखा है और इसको जो तराशा है सर, उसके लिए सर फोरम को सैल्यूट है, दिल से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद है।
तपस्या कैंपस है स्पेसिफिकली जहाँ पे हम खड़े हुए हैं। दिस शुड बी अ वे फॉरवर्ड फॉर एनी एस्पिरेंट।
हेलो हुनर, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल कांग्रेचुलेशंस।
गुड इवनिंग सर, थैंक यू।
ये बताइए कि कैसे सिविल सर्विस दिमाग में कैसे आया? हाउ इट केम टू यू? हाउ और व्हेन डिड इट अकर यू हैव टू बिकम अ सिविल सर्वेंट?
So it's not so much the civil service as it was a career in diplomacy. There are two answers. One is the academic. I'm interested in reading on international affairs. That's the theoretical answer of it. The real answer is I was very young when we have a family friend who's a retired ambassador. He told me his story of serving in North Korea.
Okay.
And somewhere my mind was made that if this is a career, then I want it.
Okay, so you were quite specific right from the beginning for IFS.
Yes, sir.
And what about PSIR? Why PSIR?
So again, what every topper will tell you, you have overlap with GS2. In any case, it's something that you will have to study. But I also had done a master's in political science from JNU, and then I was interested in reading and listening to podcasts about IR in general. It was something I was doing outside prep, so it made sense to include it in preparation.
Okay, so basically a backgrounder also, and also you could see that similarity with GS syllabus. So you found it useful from GS2 perspective or across the GS papers? The optional?
Sir, in particular GS2.
GS2.
Because at least half the paper 1B syllabus will have overlap with GS2, maybe more. And sometimes questions that you have not actually prepared, you're able to use your knowledge from one or the other paper.
So, and you have this world history section, then modern history section GS1, then international financial system GS3, and also the climate negotiations, Kyoto Protocol, UNFCCC, PES, everything you study in PSIR.
Correct. When you're writing the GS papers, you are using your whole brain. Anything and everything that you've studied in the past will be used in that exam. So absolutely, it helps across papers.
Okay, well, so the problem that I have seen candidates facing is this, that nowadays there is a kind of stagnancy, a kind of plateau in PSIR marks that they are securing in mains exam. And one problem that I have seen is the deficiency in terms of the quality content. So how to prepare for PSIR optional? What is the best way? So is it to take some institute's note and see the topper's note, or there is a better way to do it?
So PSIR is a very high effort game. Till now, I've said there's so much overlap, it feels like jaldi ho jayega. We'll be able to cover it faster than other people cover other optionals, we'll revise it twice. That's not really the case. It is an extremely high effort game. The problem that we've also interacted amongst ourselves, we've realized we're all reading the same thing, writing the same thing, and then expecting a higher score. So I agree, you have to make your own notes. Make your notes first, practice writing answers, practice PYQs, take a lot of feedback on everything that you write, and then see and use toppers' notes. I don't discourage it, but do it for value addition. Maybe someone is writing examples that you're not writing. Do it for that. But that should be, a 10 or 15 minute effort. It shouldn't be the main base that you use for your optional, because ultimately the optional is the game changer.
So, do you concur that the main base content would be the content that you make on your own?
Absolutely. That's what you'll remember at the end.
So, it should be actually, even if it is topper's note, that is the notes distilled out of his readings, not your reading. So, you won't be able to replicate that. Does that make sense? Or you had something to say?
No, I agree. But I also think that in this exam, you have very limited time and you want to maximize the amount that you can cover. So be smart about it, but don't cut corners when it comes to the optional. That's where you have to score.
Okay, that's relevant point. Now, another problem, Hunar, that I have seen candidates facing, I have been suggesting for the same, but just they would like it to listen from you also, or your personal opinions, that they find this challenge of making their PSIR answer distinct from GS answer. So what's your take on it? Why the problem and why they face this issue?
So there are two things. The first is that maybe we're not being very clear with the syllabus that we're reading. So we have different subtopics in GS and different subtopics for PSIR. First, we should be very clear about that. The second thing is that the minute you start invoking certain scholars, the minute you start using certain dimensions that you're supposed to use for the optional, that distinction will automatically come. One thing that I did do across both GS2 and PSIR is to use examples. So even in my optionals, even if I'm writing in a paragraph, at the end I'll write example and I'll mention something.
Okay. So let us say you get to study things from a source on federalism. So you can get a question on GS2 and PSIR optional also. What makes a distinction? If you talk a little bit about it, what makes the real distinction between the PSIR answer and GS2 answer? Because many times questions might look similar and there have been certain questions. So how to bring that distinction? Is it a real challenge or it is a challenge because of the way students approach the optional?
So it's both things. It's also about developing a certain perspective that will come with more reading, with more practice. But also it's about approaching it with certain dimensions. So when you start using more dimensions, more scholars start explaining those arguments, that's where the difference will come.
Okay. Now, how to cover the dynamic part, Hunar? That is the major component while you prepare for PSIR optional. What is the best way to approach the current affairs that needs to be integrated with syllabus?
So dynamism will come primarily in two areas. One in paper 1B, which is Indian government and politics. Second in 2B, India and the world. Some amount in 2A also, but largely in these two sections. These are also the two sections that we tend to attempt more. Despite how much ever political theory you study, and every time that I've written the mains exam, I've decided I'll attempt more from political theory. You don't end up doing it because the questions are very difficult, sometimes very technical. So you end up attempting more 1B and more 2B. So you should focus on the dynamism in PSIR. Now you can do it one of two ways. Either you refer to someone who is curating it for PSIR specifically. Don't use a GS2 compilation because that will give you examples, but that is one sentence. You need much more than that. And also you should always supplement it. If you have taken PSIR, then odds are you already have a keen interest in some of this. So for example, I used to listen to Suhasini Heather's podcast, Worldview, so doing some of these exercises will help.
Throughout the year, don't just rely on compilation. That would be the point. That would be the learning.
Yes. In fact, 2B is a very long game. There were questions on US withdrawal from Afghanistan. There was a question on Myanmar 2 years after this happened. So it is a long game.
Okay. So any specific sources other than Suhasini Heather that you followed on your own?
So I used editorial compilations.
Editorial compilations.
Okay. So wherever I felt that there was a scholar that was resonating in their arguments with how I also felt, because that is how I would be able to remember it in the exam. No point reading something you're not using. So I used those two, podcasts and editorials.
How did you strategize answer writing? Did you start attempting the full length test right from the beginning, or you attempted? How did you approach it?
Sir, in all honesty, I've written the full length tests for PSIR only in mains exam centers, never in my own house. Because it's a very daunting task to be able to write so many questions. And by the end, I think there is a God, because there is a reason that the optional paper happens in the end. After that, you cannot write once you've written those papers.
Okay.
So my approach was to study and prepare one topic and then write 5 or 6 answers for that topic, get that evaluated, and then try to implement those learnings in the next answer.
So approach it topic-wise. That is what you're suggesting.
Yes.
Okay. And where lies the problem? That why students face this issue? Even if why do they have this question that although they have content, but they're not able to write?
Because they haven't practiced enough.
Okay.
My first answer that I ever wrote is a sheet that I still have. It's on the non-aligned movement, something that I'm fairly comfortable with. I've studied it before. It's not a particularly challenging topic. But when you're asked to compress all the information that you've read and write in 2 sides, 3 sides, 4 sides, suddenly it's a very daunting task in a very limited amount of time. So start writing. That's when you'll realize where you get stuck. Writing should also happen early.
So it's just the inertia. And even if it is about the deficiency of content, that's something that can be rectified along the process. So once you start writing, you identify that you lack on this or that, and then you figure out, is that the way?
So it's inertia. It's also a very crucial exercise without which your prep will never be complete. So for example, in my NAM answer, in my notes, it said NAM is a block of 120 countries or something. And that's how my notes were structured, and I thought my notes are great. But when you start writing an answer on NAM, you realize your introductory sentence will never be 120 countries. They're asking you a particular angle for that organization or that theme that's in current affairs, right? So it's very important to start writing, because that's when you realize that you shouldn't be mugging up what you've been mugging up so far. And you will start
what
making
about
amends.
this trend, again, a problematic trend that I've seen, Hunar, that they are the students, the candidates who are going to write mains, they are trying to prepare ready-made intros and ready-made conclusions out of the content that they are having, and then they try to perform better in exam. Is that the good way to approach the exam?
I think because this works in GS, we expect it to work in PSIR, but that's not, it doesn't translate the same way. I refer to a topper copy, someone who'd scored above 300, and I realized the main difference there was that I am just using an introduction based on the question, based on the keyword in the question. And what she has done is she has written an introduction for the question that is asked. And those are two completely different things. So it's important to have that dynamism, and that will come with practice.
And then ready-made intros and conclusions won't work.
Won't work for PSIR.
So it has to be quite organic, or you can say more genuinely constructed out of the demand that is raised in the question. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what's the relevance of this option for interview? You have scored exceptionally good marks in interview. So what is the role of PSIR? As you said in our own conversation that no question from IR was asked. But still, when you try to prepare for this interview, you must have prepared IR and IGP. So how did you approach interview with PSIR perspective?
So I was particularly lucky to have a lot of convergences. I studied political science, my optional was PSIR. My first preference was the Indian Foreign Service. Lots of overlap. That helps you reduce what you have to prepare for the actual interview by a lot. So that helped, and that helped me focus broadly. Even if I wasn't asked a question on IR particularly, it was an area that they left out on purpose. But it helped me prepare every other angle also. If they knew she's ready with IR, that didn't mean that other areas were lacking. I was able to spend time focusing on everything else also.
Okay. तो इंटरव्यू में प्रिपरेशन की स्टेज में ऑनर आपने करंट प्रिपेयर किया होगा, फिर उसके बाद अपने ऑप्शनल में भी थोड़ा प्रिपरेशन की होगी. You might have revised the things. Economic resource, economic survey. When you appeared for the interview, कोई ऐसा एरिया था where you knew that you could not prepare or you could not do things which to the mark?
So that will always happen. If you had one more day, if you had one more hour, if you had one more minute, you would have done better.
So were there any areas?
So बहुत areas रह जाते हैं.
बहुत areas.
I started with a priority list of what I cannot skip. DAF you cannot skip. Optional maybe there are certain themes. So for example, Western Indian political thought, they are more likely to ask you. Instead of maybe just equality as a theme. So priority list होनी चाहिए. Do as much as possible. And then the rest is.
ठीक है, अगर थ्योरी मिस भी हो गया तो IR वाला पार्ट नहीं मिस होना चाहिए, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल डेवलपमेंट्स नहीं मिस होने चाहिए, क्योंकि थ्योरी में उन्होंने इंटरव्यू में बहुत कम क्वेश्चंस पूछे हैं. जितना भी ट्रांसक्रिप्ट्स वगैरह भी देखी जाए तो दे हैव नॉट आस्क्ड फ्रॉम थ्योरी. सो व्हाट वर्कड इन इंटरव्यू अकॉर्डिंग टू यू? सबसे डिसाइसिव चीज क्या रही है?
सर डिसाइसिव तो गुड फॉर्च्यून है. इन ऑल ऑनेस्टी ये ह्यूमिलिटी नहीं होती, ये सच होता है. Recently, we had a senior officer address us, and he walked in and he said, "Very good morning to the brightest youngsters in India, the brightest and the luckiest, actually." Right? So that's 100% true. Luck has to work. Uske beyond, ultimately, it's about performing on that day. That will come with confidence in your own preparation. Only then will you be able to deliver based on what they're asking you. तो जितनी practice करो, वो सब help करता है end में.
Okay, तो personality test जैसे UPSC इसको बोलता है, it is called personality test. So other than the knowledge component that you prepared from PSIR, from GS, from economy and current affairs, what personality traits you identified and then worked upon to prepare yourself for personality test? Are you able to recall some?
So the interview is such a high stress environment that whatever you are in real life will actually come out in the interview. So I had the same sense of humor that I have outside Dholpur house. That was reflecting there. I had the same sincerity in what I'm saying. That was reflecting there. तो वो सब है. I was told by a very senior officer, she said, you have a very pleasant face. You know, try and smile. जब और नहीं आ रहा और smile करो. और nervousness suppress करो. You know, all of those little micro traits will be reflected, and all of that helps.
Okay.
And the more, you know, there is not one particular kind of candidate who's selected. If we say you have to be good at speaking, then we should have a disproportionate number of lawyers getting selected or getting very high scores. हमेशा ये नहीं होता.
बिल्कुल.
It's not one type of candidate, but being authentic, that is what comes across. And I think that is what helps in the actual interview.
Okay, तो जो बच्चे अब 2026 में मेंस लिखने जा रहे हैं, they have a significant amount of time with them. So time is in their side at this moment at least. What do you suggest कि वो क्या ध्यान रखें चीज़ें, क्या उनके लिए सबसे important है to score very good in PSIR next year, and also somehow prepare themselves for this exceptional marks that you have secured in interview?
So first is, don't think that you have time, because you don't.
Correct.
Prelims आ जाएगा last 3 months, 4 months, nobody will be looking at optional. So this is really crunch time. The next 3 months is very, very crucial. And at the end, everybody, you know, you will put a lot of effort into all papers. Ultimately, the optional becomes the decider.
Okay.
So focus on that right now. You have 3 months in hand. It's very, very good time. So do that. And sir, interview, I think, is a very long process. So I think it's day in, day out. You know, you sort of start working on it every day. Somewhere it'll add up. Somewhere it'll reflect at the end.
Definitely. So this is all, Hunar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.